Well, hey there, everyone. I am so glad to be here with you today, and I want to introduce you to Karl Kapustka. Now, this man has been up to so much in the world, I can't even get it all in. It would take me the entire time to tell you all the things that this guy has been doing. But Karl and I connected recently. He reached out, came across my work, and we had a conversation and discovered that we have some things in common. Most notably childhood abuse, but also some other things. We've gone on to take our experiences of abuse and trauma to develop work that serves other people who are striving to have great lives. And so today I wanted Karl to come in and talk with me a little bit about his journey, and you'll also be able to read more, in the posts below. But I thought it would be good fun to bring him on because he's such a personality. It's kind of, you got to see him to believe him. So Karl, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate being here.
So one of the things that I discovered in our conversation and getting to know you a little bit is that while growing up, you experienced childhood sexual abuse, and then this abuse and trauma kind of continued on through your years and into adulthood. So could you take a little bit of time here at the beginning of our conversation to share some of your story with our listeners?
Sure. Uh, at the age of 8, I was raped by a man uh, on more than one occasion, actually. And you've heard the stories about going to the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and everything. Actually, this took place as a Cub Scout in a bathroom in a school facility itself the first time. After that it happened on a couple of additional uh, occasions during that time span. And being 8 years old, you're scared to death about anything, and it's like you're more embarrassed and afraid of what's going to happen to you than it is what's going to happen to that person that did that to you. And you're scared to death. You don't know what's going on, and this happened back in the 60s also, where that it wasn't as predominant in the news as it is today. So there's no program available to me or anything else like that. But along the way, and at that point, I became very introverted, very quiet, very to myself, very afraid of anything and everything that was taking place.
Yeah.
And so uh, I progressed through my elementary years that way. And then when I was 13 years of age, actually in the 8th grade at that time, I was sexually molested by another male at that time. It was just a bad situation in a bad place. I was down at the beach. I was in a restroom in a facility at the beach itself, and I was accosted in the bathroom. It was just, just horrible. I mean, and so it was like twice it happened, and it's like I'm like so embarrassed. It's like I can't tell somebody about that, and it's something that you live with the rest of your life. And the one thing that I've gone through my life is that I've gotten I know how to live a life that's happy and prosperous and just full of excitement and optimism. But there's never a day you never forget that. And you when you read these things in the newspaper about other people, deep down inside you're crying for them because you know what takes place, and you just can't understand how somebody could be that violent with another human being. So those two episodes happened at that time, and I was very shy with people, very introverted. And my first date was when I was 19 years of age. I was so afraid to even talk to a woman or anything like that, and to be in a male locker room for PE in high school. It was like so disturbing to me. It's like I would cover up. I'd be afraid. I didn't want anybody to see me. It's like you didn't even want anybody to touch you at that time. And back then, you feel like it's. I mean, I wasn't smart enough to realize what was taking place or how to even emotionally or mentally handle it at that time. The only thing I knew was that out of sight, out of mind. I just wanted to block it out totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what happened up to that point. And there were many nights that I cried, couldn't figure out what was going on. But I was more afraid of the embarrassment for me that took place. That was my main thing. I thought somebody was, people weren't going to believe me, or they were going to get angry at me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was all on me at that point.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's nowhere to turn. When I grew up during that time, it was like, okay, at that point, I'm in the 1970s, and I mean, society was changing tremendously, but more on the sexual side, like
Right.
this is okay, and everything else like that. And being a male, that wasn't anything that even today, when I go out and give speeches to people, I sit down with males and I talk about pornography and all these different issues. People don't want to talk about it. They hear about my story. It's amazing how people get drawn away from it, especially men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk about it. They think it's a woman
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So that's just a start. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Just as I hear your story, I'm just really connected to, these experiences that you've had where, you're just kind of going about living your life, doing your thing, and it gets interrupted by this abuse and this trauma completely out of the blue, right?
Yes.
And I have just like heartache for that little guy who there are no resources. There is no way to talk about this. There is no support that's available. And I think so many survivors, certainly then and even today, there's just this immediate feeling of shame and embarrassment. And I don't know what to do about this. And so we hold, these stories and the impact of that. You were sharing, some of the ways that that impacted you, how you came to feel and think, and the fears that you had and the struggles that people take for granted. But when you're a survivor of abuse and trauma, everyday things start to take on a much scarier tone, like being in the locker room
Sure.
and these sorts of asking a girl out, all of that. When was it that you did finally start to get some support and start to look at the abuse and trauma and start what we call the healing journey, so to speak?
Wow. That is, when did it start? I think it really started, I'd say about 12 years ago, actually. It
Mhm.
was the beginning. I was married. I got married at 29 and a half years old. And being a victim of that nature early on in life, uh, you you have these insecurities. You feel like you're a failure at everything, and that you kind of like get programmed in your mind that it's okay to be abused in a lot of ways. You don't know how to react to it. And I was in a marriage, and I got married at 29 and a half. And I was really very naive about it at that time, really. And really, one of the reasons why I really got married, I know this sounds weird, but I had friends who were all married, and I mean, at that time, and here I was, pretty decent looking guy and everything. I'm single. I'm 29. I'm really, like, even before that, 26, 27, I'm not really having a steady girlfriend or anything. And everybody, all my friends are saying, "What's wrong with you? You're weird,
Mhm.
or
Oh man.
or even gay or
Yeah.
something like that." Which, I mean, people have their preferences, and that's fine. But you start hearing all these things about who you are and the
Yeah.
problems that you have as an individual, and starts working at you mentally, emotionally, and everything else like that. So when I even got married, I mean, I kind of felt like I rushed into something,
Mm.
but I was taught that during that time that when you get into a marriage, I was taught, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, one of those kind of
Yeah.
philosophies in life. I said, well, if I'm kind and generous and serve somebody else, they're going to be the same way. Well, life doesn't always work that way.
That's right.
And unfortunately, uh, the person I married had a bipolar disorder that escalated throughout the years. So, as you know, it's becomes a very destructive relationship over the course of time, threatened physically, verbally, uh, turned into a very, very abusive situation. I had children along the way. I stayed in the marriage because of the children. Uh, I've read all these statistics about fatherless homes and the damage that it does to not having fathers at home. So I was very like, this is not going to be my kids.
Right.
So I was like stuck into something, used to, never had any help prior to that. So I'm used to this emotional and mental and really physical abuse that was going on. And being a guy, well, the only thing I ever knew was, hey, just tough it up. You're a guy, you can handle that, because the stories never happened with guys. And I'll never forget the beginning of the end was that I used to hide under tables, no lie, underneath my automobiles, lock myself into my car at times. At night, I'd go to bed at a reasonable time, 9, 10 o'clock at night. There's so many times that in the middle of the night, I'd be greeted with a scream or something walking into my bedroom as I'm sleeping, like tearing into me for one reason or another, which is not normal.
Right.
And I'll never forget the one time that I'm sleeping, and my wife at the time was upstairs on the computer. She loved to be up. She had all these major highs and lows, but she'd be up super late at night. And I'd be sleeping, put my hand underneath the pillow one night, and there was a switchblade underneath her pillow. Wow.
Yeah.
She said that was one of my children's and she hid it there. But a week later, she told me over a calm time over dinner outside at a restaurant, she said, yeah, that day I was going to kill you. She actually admitted it to me.
Oh, man.
But getting back to the question, it was about 12 years ago, it was 2006. And I came home from work. It was about 6 o'clock at night. My son, I do believe, was 2 years old or close to that. He was running around with in his Pampers, and they were wet. He didn't have a shirt on or anything. Other children were upstairs, and I knew the Pampers were in my bedroom. So I go to the bedroom, the door's locked. I said, oh no, one of these episodes again. So I greeted her. I knocked on the door, and she comes out screaming at me and starts pounding on me, hitting me. I'm holding the baby with one hand. And I'm walking out, and I grab this little snapshot cameras that they used to have back then, because this has happened before. I said, I got to start protecting myself.
Right.
So as she's hitting, took 2 or 3 pictures, and grabbed my oldest son, Carl, came downstairs. I think it was 14, 15 at the time. I told him to grab the baby, and I ran outside. I lived on a little ranch out in a community outside San Antonio, Texas at the time. Small, very small community. Maybe a little, well, I won't even get into that. But anyway, so I'm sitting out there cooling down. And as I left the house, I said, Jimmy, you do this to me all the time. One of these days, I'm going to call the police on you. And I just sat out there. Next thing you know, a police officer pulls up. So what are you doing here? She says, domestic violence. I said, I didn't call. She said, no. Your wife called on you. I said, you gotta be kidding. She hit me. So we're talking and everything like that. A city police officer for the community I lived in, that was a county officer, a city policeman came in. And he gets out of the car, and I'll never forget, he was maybe 35, 40 years old, husky looking, and he was bald, and that for your listeners out there, men listeners who are bald, I have nothing against them, okay? But anyway, I'm just telling you the story. You never forget any
those details
on it. And he walks out, and I said, what are you doing here? He said, domestic violence. And I said, you got to be kidding. She hit me.
Mm.
And he says, no, 99% of the time, the man is guilty. He said that to me straight. And I thought
Wow.
to myself, this is not good. As he's walking out of his car, I said to him, I said, look, I even got a couple pictures. Take it. He took those pictures, that camera, gave it to her and says, look, he's trying to get you thrown in jail.
Wow. Dang.
So anyway, so I got arrested that day. And they stuck me in the holding tank in the middle of the night. They actually put shackles on my legs,
Mm.
and which up to that age, late 40s, 49, whatever it was at that time, I never even. I mean, I'm like one of these clean, like straight everything I do in life. Never been even in the back of a police car. Okay, and it's
Yeah.
like all of a sudden they shackled me, they dragged me in there. I sat all night. The next morning, they took me to the magistrate. It was a small town in Texas. And it was a woman who was it was a magistrate. She was about 74, 75 years old. They sat me down with shackles, and they said and she didn't even let me say two words. And she says, okay, 48 hours after you post bail. No, she said 48 hours after bail. I said, what do you mean 48 hours? She said, you're going to sit in jail for 48 hours after bail. So it took me like six,
Wow.
7 hours to get somebody, because you have one phone call to get a hold of somebody. And so it took me that long to get somebody to get post bail. And then at that point, they put me into population. And the only good thing about that was I do look good in grays, okay? But outside of that, put me in population. So I'm
Stylish.
in this huge,
Oh man.
unbelievable room at 11:30 at night. There's 40 people, 40 men in this room, and it's like a zoo,
Wow.
ripping around and everything.
Yeah.
And I said, go find your own cot and everything. So I lay down. I found them waiting back to the bottom and covered up in there. The cot, the guy next to me is sitting there masturbating. I know it's like just one thing after another that I
Mhm.
do to
Mhm.
get away from it. It's like
So Carl,
society wants you to do one thing, and then they stick
you're
you.
in this situation.
So
Yeah.
it's like one thing, I'm being bombarded one way or another
Right.
with things.
So I just want to jump in here real quick because something that's really standing out to me about this is we have a lot in common. We both experienced childhood trauma. We both experienced domestic violence. I was in a 10-year relationship that was very abusive. But as much as we have in common, there are some very real distinctions about our experiences. Me as a female, you as a male. And I know over the course of this month, you're going to expand on this more and talk about this more in your blog post and explore this. But I want to just, as we start to wrap up here today, take some time to just name some of the things that you've really seen as distinct or different. As a male survivor, what are some of the obstacles that you've run into? What are some of the experiences that you've had that you feel are unique to being a male survivor of abuse and trauma?
Right. Well, first of all, what's going on in society today, I am all for that Me Too movement. I think that this has been like way shuffled way to the side for way too long. Okay, that's number one thing. Number two, the big difference between a man and a woman that's gone through this is that a woman becomes believable with her story. A man, everybody looks the other way. People still do not want to talk about what happens to a man.
Mm.
It's 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 like a double standard almost. And
Mhm.
women are willing to start talking about it. Men still don't want to talk about it. Men don't even want to look at the problem, that the source of the problem itself. And I really believe the source of the problem is how men have been raised a certain way, what they see on television and through the games they play, and through just being proactive on this problem itself.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
very unbelieved from
Yeah.
everybody from when I started telling the story, even when I was married with the bipolar, the mental illnesses, whether I was raped at the age of 8 or sexual abuse at 13 or what happened after I was married, this is mental abuse. And people think that, okay, you break a leg, it's okay, we're going to solve the problem. But when you start talking about mental abuse or mental problems, people like to look the other way.
Shy away from it.
Don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
So the really big difference right now is that even with a church, it's so funny that we're talking about this. I went to a church meeting last Wednesday, and they were talking about these issues, and they have all these programs for women.
For women.
They do not have any programs for men. And I raised my hand and said, what about men?
Yeah.
And
sure.
they don't know, people don't even know how to deal with it at this point.
Yeah.
And even the courts and the laws in this country don't know, the judges don't know how to deal with these issues.
Yeah, that's right.
And so those are some of the things that, I mean, we could talk for days and days.
For days.
And
That's right.
I have friends who have been victims just like you. They call me up and we talk a lot about what takes place.
Right. I really appreciate what you're saying there, and it's one of the reasons why I really love highlighting men's stories, because we don't hear them enough. And so I just really thank you and acknowledge you for being willing to share your story, because you're overcoming, first of all, any of that old like shame and embarrassment and any of that stuff, and then to know that when you put that story out there in society that you're facing that same kind of dismissal or shaming. We have safe spaces and people who will not shame survivors, male or female. But I think that as hard as it is for women to come forward, and it is hard, and there's still victim blaming and slut shaming and all of this stuff that happens, for male survivors, it's just almost like this immediate dismissal. Like, that can't be true, or that can't be real, and that's so hurtful to any survivor of trauma. So I thank you for using your voice in the way that you are and sharing your story. And I look forward over this next month on the blog to hear more. We're going to delve into this further. You're going to share more of your story and more of your insights and perspectives, and the best part, how life has evolved for you. Because one of the things we're always talking about in the Beyond Surviving world is what happens after abuse and trauma, and what does life look like when we heal, and what are the things that we becomes possible and available. And you've gone on to create an amazing business and an amazing life for yourself. So for those of you who are listening, be sure to tune in and come back and check the blog each week to hear more of Carl's story. Any quick final thoughts here as we wrap up today?
Rachel, as I want to tell you and your viewers, and this, there's tremendous hope out there for people to actually live a very prosperous and happy life. There is, it's just us putting your own system in place and putting everything in perspective, and just never giving up, because your day will be here. And life is so wonderful after you get out of that cloud. And that's all I want to leave you with right now.
Oh, man. Yes. Cheers to that.
Amen. Yes.
That's right. Thank you so much for those words of encouragement and hope. And thank you for taking the time to be here and chat with me today. I look forward to reading your further post and sharing you with the community. And as always, for those of you who are listening, be sure to reach out. We're here to support you any way we can. Come visit us at rachelgrantcoaching.com. And I'll also have Carl's website here in the show notes as well. So until we meet again, Carl, thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
All right, bye-bye.